Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The principal of an elementary school in Fort Frances, Ontario, has been charged with child luring by provincial police. 53-year-old Shane Beckett is alleged to have communicated over the internet with a child he believed to be under the age of 16 for the purposes of committing a sexual assault. That's according to court documents. The alleged communications happened between February 9th and 13th. Beckett was the principal of Robert Moore School at the time of his arrest earlier this week. He's being released on bail. His next court date is April 2nd. None of the charges have been proven in court. A spokesperson for the Rainy River School District says counselors are available at the school for students and staff. Fort Frances is 360 kilometers east of Winnipeg. Beckett started his teaching career in nearby Inuit First Nation. The first-degree murder trial of a 24-year-old man accused of killing a 20-year-old Anishinaabe woman from the Saugeen First Nation continues in Winnipeg this week. T.R. Wheatley's been at the trial and has these details.
A framed photo of Mackaylah Gerard-Roussin is carried out of the courthouse by some family that have been inside for the first-degree murder trial of Josh Benoit for allegedly killing her back on August 25, 2022. Benoit is pleading not guilty in this judge-alone trial. Over 9 days, they have sat through the testimony of 19 witnesses called by the Crown. In court on Thursday, there were arguments over the admissibility of some photos presented by the Crown as evidence. They are photos from red light cameras that show Benoit's car near Mackaylah's residence in Winnipeg and of his car leaving the city heading towards Steinbach, a small town just 50 kilometers southeast of Winnipeg. They were taken the same day it's alleged Benoit killed her. The judge is expected to decide whether or not they will be admissible next week. Last week, RCMP officers testified they responded to a 911 call on August 27, 2022, to which the caller indicated Benoit had committed a homicide at his mother's home in Steinbach. That testimony was backed by Benoit's father, who also told the court last week that he was the one to call 911, saying he had seen a body in his son's trunk after helping him with a flat tire. When RCMP arrived at Benoit's mom's home, he had fled in his vehicle. RCMP chased and arrested him, and in the process, his car started on fire. RCMP told court Benoit set it on fire himself. There was no body in the car at the time. Mackaylah wasn't found until August 28 on a remote ATV trail about 50 kilometers south of Steinbach. Her remains were in a deep storage tote container. As well, video surveillance from the Canadian Tire in Steinbach from August 23rd, 2 days before Mackaylah was reported missing. RCMP testified last week that Benoit was seen buying items such as cement mix, a baseball bat, as well as a bin that appeared to be like the one Mackaylah was found in. The Crown says the materials prove beyond a reasonable doubt Benoit's actions were intentional. Defense is questioning whether or not the RCMP followed protocols when obtaining the materials. The trial continues next week when the defense is expected to present their case. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Indigenous Services Minister Mandy Galmasti was in Nunavik in northern Quebec Thursday afternoon, where she announced close to $230 million in federal funding for initiatives that benefit Inuit people living in northern Canada. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
Speaking at a press conference in Kuujjuaq, Galmasti said the new funding will help provide stability for northern programming.
Today's announcements are about making sure that families and communities have the support that they need now, and they have the support while they're continuing to work on solutions that are strengthened by the Inuit of Inuit Nunavut.
The government is providing $115 million to renew funding for the Inuit Child First Initiative until March 2027, $50 million for the new Inuit Nunavut University, $30 million for the Nutrition North Canada subsidy, and $27 million over 5 years to eliminate tuberculosis in Inuit Nunavut. Maggie Emdluck, the chairperson of the Kitivik Regional Government, echoed Galmasti's sentiments.
It's very good to hear that efforts and funding are being made towards our youth and children in the region. As you may know, majority of our population is children and youth. So there will be efforts made, more efforts made again to address, for the future of our population.
However, Nunavut MP Lori Idlow questioned why this funding wasn't part of the Carney government's budget released last fall. She also said the funding for the Inuit Child First Initiative won't be enough to address the current backlog of applications.
I have current constituents that have reached out to me who, after the program was extended, are still waiting for responses from Indigenous Services Canada on their current ICFI applications. They've been waiting 8 months, 9 months for their applications. And what about these applicants?
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A Native American-run encampment sits across from an Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, detention center. The site has a history of detaining Native Americans, as more than 1,600 Dakota were imprisoned there after the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. Savannah Craig reports a Dakota woman is using the camp to help heal after being imprisoned by ICE in this detention center in January.
What? It would be amazing. When we would go to the bathroom, we would be led around in our shackles on our feet and on our arms.
Sophie Watso spent 48 hours inside the Whipple Detention Center.
It's a concentration camp in there.
That's how this Metawakan Dakota woman explains her detention by Immigration and Customs agents, better known as ICE. Now she's back with her loved ones. She was detained in Minneapolis on January 14th. That's when the violence began.
Put me on top of the glass that they just broke, and they ripped my dog from my arms and put me in a vehicle by my neck, trying to get me to sit down.
She was detained over a kilometer away from Fort Snelling. This is the same site where 1,600 Dakota people were imprisoned following the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862.
On my way being transferred to Fort Snelling, I sang a prayer song, one of the only prayer songs that I know fully by heart. And the prayer is asking for help, expressing my will to live. And I knew that my ancestors were where I was going at Fort Snelling. And so I wanted to pray to them, and I wanted to greet them in a good way. And I really, really needed them to hear me. And I know that they did.
Now Watso is finding community and healing in a space that's not so far away from the detention center.
Well, we are in the process of getting this bison hide ready for stretching and tanning.
Community members have been donating supplies to the camp.
This is my first time handling bison in these last few days. And it feels really good. It feels like I'm reconnecting, to something that was already in me.
Here on the encampment grounds, people are gathered by the fire, but not far behind them is Whipple Detention Center. Encampment participant Zachary White is from Leech Lake Reservation. He's hoping the encampment will spark dialogue with the state and the federal government.
ICE was the last straw. They come in here. I watched them terrorize my neighbors. I watched all these people come together and stand up against them.
Erica Crazy Hawk is from the Crow Creek Sioux tribe. She's part of establishing the camp. She says the trauma of the state taking her people is in her blood memory.
When these things started coming, it kind of shook up a lot of, the people here that, especially the Dakota exiled, being forced out of our lands, being taken, from our teepees and our bark lodges like that.
We got soup most of the time.
For Watso, the encampment is an important stand against ICE and the detainment of community members.
We're in prayer. This is not a protest camp. It's a prayer camp. And the things that we pray for are for the safety of those people in there, everybody who's detained, kidnapped, and not only in that building, but in this whole country.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Coming up after the break, our Truth in Politics panel will be here to discuss Métis Nation Saskatchewan cutting its mental health and addictions programming. Stick around. Welcome back. Concerns from the Indigenous community in Winnipeg help prevent a proposed bylaw involving public protests from moving forward. Sav Jonesa explains.
Thousands of Winnipeggers used their democratic voices to stop a bylaw that would have restricted certain forms of protest in the city. Many shared their opposition through letters to City Hall, while on Tuesday more than 100 spoke as delegates in front of the Executive Policy Committee. City Councillor Evan Duncan put the bylaw forward last year, but says it is shelved for now due to public feedback.
As we heard from several groups today, too broad, okay? That's a great point that the community is making here. My bad for not doing the extensive community consultation that is needed in this case, but I'm still supportive of safe spaces within the city of Winnipeg.
The proposed bylaw would have restricted what it called nuisance demonstrations within 100 meters of designated facilities. Protests that obstruct pedestrians or vehicles without a permit, ones that used items like megaphones without a permit, and protests objecting ideas, actions, or specified characteristics of certain people or groups. Those in opposition feared the bylaw was too vague, could be used inappropriately, and would infringe on charter rights.
The public doesn't seem to care or aware of the violence towards us Indigenous women until we make it loud. With our drumming, our megaphone, making it inconvenient for people to get home.
Delegate Viv Ketchum was worried how any future bylaws like this could impact Indigenous-led protests. She wore a ribbon skirt, medicine pouch, and a red handprint on her face representing silence and violence against Indigenous women. She says these are all symbols of resistance.
I don't want my Indigenous voice silenced. I spent my early years with my voice silenced by the church and the federal government. I have found my voice. I'll still be out there protesting, alone or with my brothers and sisters.
Delegate Kaki K. Thundersky says bylaws like this would further criminalize movements that Indigenous people have relied on for securing their rights.
It's been a way that our people have survived these policies that continue to attack us, is resistance. And they shouldn't have a say in that. They shouldn't have a say in us standing up for injustices on our own lands, on our own territories. Because if we didn't stand up, we wouldn't have survived. We wouldn't have had the rights we have now. We wouldn't have had the access, and our cultures and our ceremonies wouldn't have survived either without resistance.
Duncan says he wasn't surprised by the unusually large turnout of delegates considering the issue, and says it's a great sign of democracy working.
It's important that those folks are heard. It doesn't mean that they're going to change or impact the decision of council. Ultimately, council is supreme and they'll make a decision.
Mayor Scott Gillingham says he supports the decision to shelve the bylaw. He says the federal government's proposed Bill C-9 will cover lots of the issues the bylaw mentioned, and he doesn't think it will be necessary to look at it again.
I don't see this bill going back to the drawing board.
APTN News asked specifically about threats to Indigenous protesting rights in Winnipeg.
Do you think Indigenous people should have any restrictions regarding protesting or demonstrations?
Well, I think that all people in Canada should be subject to the same set of rules and laws that would govern and do govern our society.
Winnipeg has had several landmark protests in its history, including the Red River Resistance, the 1919 General Strike, and the Search the Landfill movement. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Métis Nation Saskatchewan says it has made the difficult decision to reduce mental health services due to federal funding cuts. The cuts will directly impact citizens who rely on the support and members of the team. But the announcement comes at a time when the MNS also confirmed it is spending just over $7,000 a month for office space in Ottawa. It's one of our topics for this week's Truth in Politics panel. With us as always, Jennifer Leywitz and Nigan Sinclair. Jennifer, Nigan, great to see you both. Jennifer, we'll start with you and your thoughts on Métis Nation Saskatchewan cutting mental health and addiction services and the timing of it.
I would say that I'm really not surprised. Everybody kind of knows by now with my history on this panel that there's a lot of frustrations growing with the Métis Nation Saskatchewan. And this goes back to what we've been kind of talking about since the beginning, that this is a government that is in the capacity building stage and realistically needs to be creating a lot more long-term sustainability and, protecting the core foundations of what good governance is. And they've been relying quite heavily on these funding agreements, and this one specifically, which is obviously a short-term funding agreement that they would have known is sunsetting. But instead of, doing some preemptive work on this, it seems like they kind of just are throwing this on all of their citizens now, being like, oops, sorry, it's ending next month, best of luck. I've been receiving emails, messages, calls from mental health therapists around the province now that are really concerned because they have a lot of people that have been accessing this program. And I think it's time that we start talking about what it looks like to actually build foundations, especially in mental health, which is the backbone of any good governance. And it seems like it's just being treated as a program and it's just being cut and everyone enjoy the next steps from there, basically. So.
Right. Nigan, is this a bad look given M&S just approved what they called a historic $200 million budget for the year and is also spending $7,000 a month to rent an office space in Ottawa?
Certainly, it's indicative of yet another huge missed opportunity for M&S. Jen has done a very good job sort of documenting blow by blow the different ways in which the M&S has reduced free speech, reduced relationship with community, and then really just turned inward to build more profile for local politicians, for people who are working within the organization than actually serving people. The fact is that when you cut mental health services, you're actually cutting something that is central and a core to us as Indigenous peoples. I mean, we are not just bodies and we are not just, constituents, but vote. We are entire communities with minds, bodies, hearts, spirits, and anybody who spends any time working with our teachings, with our traditions, knows that if you cannot serve the needs of mental health, really, it doesn't matter how many apartments you provide, it doesn't matter how many social assistance checks you provide, because ultimately what you're doing is you're becoming part of the problem. If we don't deal with the mental health issues, which then goes directly to issues involving justice, involving domestic issues, involving the child welfare system, I mean, all of those things come directly from mental health, not physical health. And of course, while we do worry about things like diabetes and other things, it's the mental health that's really the center core. So what really I think is the M&S has really lost its way. It's lost its vision, and it's really not listening to the people who are most dedicated to the organization. And if I could just give a little kudos to Jen. Of course, I may be a bit biased that we're on this panel every week, but it's pretty upsetting that somebody so dedicated to the organization would not be listened to. And if she's just one, I imagine all the other ones who don't have weekly panels, they can talk about this.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there, but big thanks to you both and safe travels.
You guys.
We've got a preview of tonight's Nation to Nation after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And if you're enjoying the Olympics, here is Cortina from 7,000 feet. Thanks to Annie Moljeski, who is working on the games and also happens to be a huge APTN fan. Thanks, Andy. Send us your pictures to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sunny and +2 for Fredericton, 4 above with the sun out for Halifax. -21 for Kuujjuaq, 12 below for Nain. Cloudy and -3 in Montreal, -8 for Chibougamau. +1 and cloudy in Sault Ste. Marie, 0 for Ottawa. -3 for Thunder Bay, 8 below for Sioux Lookout. -15 for God's Lake, -13 for the Pas. 12 below in Winnipeg and Brandon. -12 for Regina, 13 below for Saskatoon. -15 for Meadow Lake and Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, -13 in High Level, 12 below for Fort McMurray. -12 for Edmonton, sunny, and -6 in Lethbridge. +3 for Vancouver, 4 above for Victoria. -5 in Prince George, cloudy and 2 below for Smithers. -21 in Old Crow, 24 below for Rock River. -15 in Yellowknife, 19 below in Norman Wells. -31 for Sax Harbor, 39 below in Paulatuck. Minus 20 for Chesterfield and Baker Lake. Minus 37 in Resolute, 33 below in Arctic Bay. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Karen Pugliese is standing by with a preview of tonight's Nation to Nation.
So coming up tonight on Nation to Nation, Native Americans in Minneapolis have been detained in recent ICE operations, and community members are now organizing patrols, monitoring federal activity in real time and trying to protect their neighbors. We'll have more from APTN reporter Savannah Craig, who's been on the ground, and that's coming up in just a few minutes on Nation to Nation.
Good stuff, Karen. Thanks. APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. Video journalist Rob Smith returns to his family's traditional homeland in Kingcome Inlet on BC's Central Coast. For decades, the Jawa-Danook First Nation has been at odds with a conservation group to get land back it believes was illegally appropriated. They say it's a dispute that may lead to direct action if a solution is not found. Here's a preview.
It's a spur-of-the-moment decision. Chief Willie Moon decides to head down the river. He's a hereditary chief and elected chief counselor for the Jawa-Danook First Nation. He has a story to tell.
We're dealing with Nature Trust. They purchased a lot of this land. The land was stolen from us. Ernest Halliday was an Indian agent up here and started just giving away land and really never talked to our community about it.
Okay, there's a ton to unpack in that statement. Trust me, we'll get there. But the focus of this morning's discussion is Nature Trust.
The Nature Trust of BC is a leading land conservation organization.
Established in 1971, Nature Trust of BC is a nonprofit conservation organization. Across the province, the group has acquired over 500 areas protecting 180,000 acres of land and water.
That's what we're fighting for now, is to get that land back. But dealing with Nature's Trust, it's a battle and a half by itself.
And you can catch APTN Investigates a Kingcome's Ransom, airing this Saturday on APTN. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. TR will be here tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for your first look at the day's news. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned. Karen is up next with Nation to Nation. Have a great night.